I should have seen it coming. In hindsight, it had been brewing for years, lurking behind the tight-lipped smiles and the hollow pleasantries. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, never liked me, not because I was cruel, unfaithful, or lacking in devotion to her son. No, my greatest crime was existing outside of her carefully curated vision of what a worthy wife should be. She tolerated me in the way one tolerates an inconvenience, always polite, always controlled, yet dripping with condescension so thick you could drown in it. At every family gathering, she made sure to remind me, in her own subtle, elegant way, that I wasn't one of them. The wrong background, the wrong connections. A self-made woman, and in Eleanor's world, a woman who built herself, was far inferior to a woman who married into status. I had learned to ignore the veiled insults, the passive-aggressive compliments, the way she would introduce me not as Olivia, Ryan's wife, but as Ryan's wife, Olivia, as if I were merely an extension of him, an afterthought. I had endured it all with a patient smile, thinking, this is just how she is. She'll never truly accept me. But on that Sunday afternoon, standing in the grand dining room of the mansion I had bought, beneath the chandelier she so proudly claimed was a family heirloom, Eleanor finally stopped pretending. She cornered me in the kitchen while I cleared the table, her diamond bracelet glinting in the warm light as she reached for her champagne flute. I knew that look. It was the look of a woman who believed she had already won. "Olivia, dear," she began, her voice as smooth as silk, laced with the artificial sweetness she had perfected over the years. "Let's not drag this out any longer. You need to leave my son." I froze. The silverware in my hands suddenly felt heavier. Across the room, I could hear the low hum of laughter. Ryan, utterly oblivious, engaged in some cheerful conversation with his father. I turned to her slowly, careful to keep my face neutral. "Excuse me?" she said, as if I were the difficult one. "Come now, dear, you must see it, don't you? You were never the right fit for our family. No prestigious name, no powerful connections. A woman like you only holds a man like Ryan back." I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing myself to stay calm. The sheer audacity of her words should have made me angry, should have sent me into a rage. But instead I felt something else. Something unexpected. Amusement. Because Eleanor had no idea. She had no idea that the house she adored so much wasn't Ryan's accomplishment. It was mine. She had no idea that the business she dismissed as my little project had outgrown Ryan's entire career. She had no idea that the wealth she so effortlessly enjoyed, her vacations, her designer clothes, her charity luncheons, wasn't family money. It was my money, but she thought she had already won. "You don't have the right background, dear," she continued, swirling her champagne lazily. "And let's be honest, your marriage has been functional at best, hasn't it?" I clenched my jaw. Functional. Of course she would paint it that way. Because to her, love wasn't about devotion or partnership. It was about image. "Ryan will remarry," she pressed on. "We'll find someone more suitable for him. Someone with the right family, the right class. You understand, don't you?" So that was it. This wasn't just an insult, this was an ultimatum. She had already decided my time was up, and now she was simply informing me. She expected me to cry, to beg, to humiliate myself before slinking away in shame, allowing her to hand-pick Ryan's real wife. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't just about me. This was about control. And Eleanor believed she had all of it. I inhaled slowly, then exhaled, setting the plates down with deliberate precision. I let the silence stretch, let her believe, for just a moment longer, that she had succeeded. Then I smiled. Not the smile of a woman defeated. The kind of smile that should have made her uneasy. "I understand perfectly," I said. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. I didn't give her the drama she craved. I left her standing there, waiting for a reaction that would never come. She had no idea. She had no idea that the house she stood in, the house she believed to be Ryan's achievement, was in my name. She had no idea that while she was busy scheming to push me out, I had spent the last decade securing my empire. She had no idea that she was living off of me, but she would learn soon enough. That night, I lay in bed beside my husband, the man who had let his mother dictate his every move, who had never once stood up for me against her calculated cruelty. I realized something. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was just amused. Because Eleanor had played her hand, she had shown her cards, and now the game was mine to win. She thought she had all the power. She thought she was removing me from her family. She had no idea that by trying to cut me out, she had just given me permission to cut them off first. And when the truth finally unraveled, when she and Ryan realized exactly who held all the real power, it would already be too late. The morning after Eleanor so graciously informed me that I was no longer welcome in my own marriage, I woke up early. Not because I was upset. Far from it. I had slept soundly, peacefully even, while my dear mother-in-law undoubtedly spent the night celebrating what she believed was her greatest victory. I stretched, enjoying the luxurious softness of my silk sheets, and glanced over at Ryan. He was still asleep, his breathing deep and even, completely unaware of the quiet war that had begun right under his nose. If only he knew. I slid out of bed, wrapping my robe around me as I padded downstairs to the kitchen. The estate was silent at this hour, the first rays of morning light filtering through the massive windows, illuminating the elegant marble countertops and the pristine decor that Eleanor so adored. My countertops. My decor. My house. I made myself a cup of coffee, savoring the warmth as I let my mind run through the events of yesterday. Eleanor thought she had everything figured out. She thought Ryan was hers to control, that our marriage was nothing more than a transaction waiting to be undone. She thought I was just another woman who had married into her family, dependent on their wealth, their name, their influence. She was wrong. Because what she didn't know, what she had never bothered to find out, was that I had built my own empire long before I had ever met her son. While she had spent her days preening at charity galas, whispering gossip into the ears of high society, I had spent my time crafting something real, something untouchable. And now it was time to let the game begin. The first crack in Ryan's world. It didn't take long for Eleanor to make her next move. By the afternoon, I received a text from Ryan. Lunch with Mom. She mentioned wanting to talk to me about some things. You good if I head over? I smiled, sipping my tea. Oh, Eleanor, you work fast. Of course, babe, I texted back. Have fun. And so he went, blissfully unaware that he was walking straight into a carefully laid trap. I could already imagine how the conversation would unfold. Eleanor, in all her refined glory, would sit across from him at her favorite country club, her expression laced with just the right amount of concern. She wouldn't come right out and say it, not at first. No, she'd be strategic. She'd ease into it, voicing her worries as if she were doing it for his sake. Darling, I just want what's best for you. You deserve someone who truly understands your world. I'm not saying Olivia is a bad person, but she's different. She would plant the seeds of doubt, letting them take root in Ryan's mind. And because my dear husband had spent his entire life under her influence, he would listen. I could already picture his responses, the soft sighs, the uneasy nods, the weak attempts to defend me. But Mom, she's always been good to me, before ultimately crumbling under her well-practiced disappointment. I wasn't worried, because what Eleanor had never understood about me was that I didn't play by her rules. I didn't need Ryan's protection, nor did I need to beg for my place in this family. While she was busy plotting, I was already 3 steps ahead, letting them dig their own graves. That evening, Ryan returned home later than usual. He was quieter, his usual easygoing demeanor slightly stiff as he set down his keys. Everything okay? I asked, my voice laced with just the right amount of curiosity. He said, rubbing the back of his neck. Mom just had some thoughts about us, about our future. I feigned confusion. Oh, and what did she say? He hesitated, as if unsure whether to share the details. "You just thinks we maybe have different priorities," he said carefully. I hummed thoughtfully, taking a sip of my wine. "That's interesting." Ryan glanced at me, probably expecting some kind of outburst, some emotional reaction, but I gave him nothing. Instead, I smiled. "She always has been protective of you," I mused. His shoulders relaxed slightly, as if relieved that I wasn't making a scene. I mean, she's just looking out for me, you know. "Oh, Ryan, you poor oblivious fool." "Of course," I said sweetly, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "She only wants the best for you." That night, I let him think everything was fine. I let him think I hadn't noticed the way his mother was slowly pulling him away from me. I let him believe he was in control. Meanwhile, I made a few calls of my own. The unraveling begins. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor became bolder. She wasn't subtle anymore. She dropped hints to Ryan constantly, weaving her manipulations into every conversation. "Darling, wouldn't it be nice to have a wife who truly fits into our social circles? A woman who doesn't need to work, who can dedicate herself fully to the family? Someone with the right background, the right connections?" I watched as Ryan, ever the dutiful son, grew more and more conflicted. He never outright agreed with her, but he stopped defending me, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Then came the final push. One evening, I overheard a hushed conversation between Ryan and Eleanor in the next room. "She's not right for you," Eleanor whispered. "You've given her enough. It's time to move on." And then, the moment of truth. "If you divorce her now, I'll make sure you walk away with everything." I nearly laughed out loud. She thought she had power over me. She thought she could buy her son's freedom, that she could erase me from their lives like a bad investment. She had no idea that she was standing in a house that didn't belong to her. That night, as I lay beside Ryan, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, I realized something. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was amused. Because Eleanor had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated me. She had assumed I was just another woman clinging to a man for security. But I had never needed Ryan. And very soon, he and his mother would learn just how devastating it was to gamble against a woman who had built her own empire. They thought they were playing me, but in reality, they had just handed me everything I needed to destroy them. The next morning, I woke up before Ryan, as I had for years. Except this time, I wasn't just going through the motions of my usual routine. I was setting the stage. Today was the beginning of the end, though my dear husband and his mother had yet to realize it. I moved through the house with quiet efficiency, making my coffee, reviewing emails, and preparing for what was to come. It wasn't long before Ryan shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He leaned against the counter, yawning, completely unaware that I had heard his conversation with his mother the night before. "Morning," he mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "Morning," I replied, my voice as smooth as ever. He hesitated, his eyes flickering to me as if searching for something. Guilt, maybe? Doubt? I gave him nothing. "You okay?" he asked cautiously. I smiled. Why wouldn't I be? Ryan studied me for a moment, and I could almost hear the thoughts running through his mind. Had his mother's words settled in? Did he truly believe he was making the right choice? I wondered if part of him still loved me, or if he had convinced himself that I was nothing more than an obstacle between him and his mother's expectations. Not that it mattered. "I have a meeting today," I said casually, glancing at the time. "I'll be home late." "Oh, with the boutique?" "Something like that," I answered vaguely. He nodded, seeming relieved. He thought I was just another woman who built a cute little business to keep myself busy, while he played the role of provider. He had no idea. The illusion of control. That afternoon, I took a meeting, not with my boutique staff, but with my lawyers. I had prepared for this moment long before Eleanor decided to make her move. My financial team had already secured everything I owned, ensuring that not a single penny of my wealth was tied to Ryan's name. The house, purchased before the marriage, titled solely in my name. The boutique, a thriving business that had expanded into 3 locations, all under my independent corporation. The investments, carefully protected, impossible for him to touch. Ryan and Eleanor thought they were taking away my life. They had no idea they were walking into financial ruin. "That the divorce filing is prepared?" I asked, crossing my legs as I sat across from my lawyer. "Yes," he confirmed, sliding a folder across the desk. "We've outlined everything. Since all assets are in your name, there's nothing he can contest. The prenuptial agreement is airtight. If he goes through with this, he walks away with nothing." Nothing. It was a word Eleanor had likely never associated with her son. She had raised him to believe he was entitled to wealth, power, and respect without ever having to earn it. But entitlement meant nothing in the face of reality. "Send it over once he makes his move," I instructed. "I want him to think he's winning. Let him feel confident, right before we pull the rug out from under him." My lawyer smirked. Understood. The breaking point. By the time I returned home, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark, save for the soft glow of the living room lamp. Ryan was waiting for me, his posture tense as he sat on the couch, his phone in his hands. "You're late," he said, his voice sharper than usual. "I told you I had a meeting," I replied smoothly, setting my bag down. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Olivia, we need to talk." Ah, there it was. The moment he had been building up to. I almost felt sorry for him. "All right," I said, sitting across from him. "Talk." He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Then, finally, he said it. "I think we should separate." I exhaled softly, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him squirm. "Okay," I said simply. Ryan blinked. "Wait, what?" "Okay," I repeated, tilting my head. "If that's what you want, I won't fight it." He had expected a breakdown. Tears, pleading, maybe even anger. Instead, I gave him indifference. "You taking this well?" he said cautiously. "What's there to fight for, Ryan?" I asked, watching as uncertainty flickered across his face. "I mean, I thought you'd..." "Rye? Beg you to stay?" I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Come on, Ryan. You and I both know this has been coming for a while." It was a test. If he had even an ounce of doubt, a shred of love left for me, I would see it in his reaction. But all he did was nod, as if this was the natural conclusion of things. "We can keep it amicable," he said, suddenly emboldened. "I don't want to hurt you, Olivia." I nearly smiled. "Oh, Ryan, you have no idea what's coming." "Of course," I agreed, standing up. "Let's keep it amicable." That night I slept soundly. Ryan, however, tossed and turned, probably wondering why I wasn't reacting the way he expected. He would find out soon enough. The fallout begins. The next morning, I received a call from my lawyer. "Air files." I smirked, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Good. Send over our response." That afternoon, Ryan walked into the house looking pale. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, holding up the divorce papers. "It's what you asked for," I said calmly. No, this says I get nothing." His voice was rising now, panic creeping in. "That's because you get nothing, Ryan," I said coolly. "That's not possible," he scoffed, shaking his head. "The house? Mine. The business? Mine. Oh. There is no R, Ryan. Everything you thought was yours was never yours to begin with." He looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. "You planned this," he whispered. I shrugged. "You made your choice. I just prepared for it." It took less than 24 hours for Eleanor to find out. I didn't hear from her directly, she was far too proud for that, but Ryan? He wasn't handling it well. By the next day, his mother's carefully curated world had begun to crack. First, the house. Then, the realization that Ryan had no legal claim to my assets. And finally, the real blow. "You tricked him!" Eleanor screeched over the phone, her voice shrill. "No, Eleanor," I said calmly. I just let him believe what he wanted to believe. That was his mistake. She hung up. I smiled. This was only the beginning. Ryan had walked into this battle thinking he held all the cards. But the truth was, he had never even been playing the game. The fallout came faster than even I expected. The moment Eleanor learned the truth, her carefully curated world shattered. She had spent years manipulating Ryan, ensuring he believed her words above all else, but now the consequences of her scheming were hitting her like a tidal wave. The house, the one she had pranced through as if she owned it, was legally mine. The boutique, the business she had mocked, was thriving beyond anything Ryan could ever achieve. And worst of all, her son, her precious, spoiled son, had nothing. I wasn't naive. I knew Eleanor wouldn't go down quietly. That's why, when I heard a knock at my office door the next morning, I wasn't surprised to find her standing there, perfectly put together, as if she wasn't seething with rage underneath that designer dress. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Do we?" Eleanor didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped into my office, shutting the door behind her with a little too much force. She was trying to regain control, but I could already see the cracks forming in her composure. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You and I both know Ryan deserves something. You can't just leave him with nothing." I tilted my head. "He left me with nothing when he decided to listen to you, didn't he?" Her nostrils flared. That was different. "How so?" I asked, feigning curiosity. She hesitated. For the first time, Eleanor was realizing she didn't have a single valid argument. "Olivia, be reasonable," she finally said, switching tactics. "Ryan has always supported you. I let out a soft laugh. "Ryan has supported me," I repeated, leaning forward. "Eleanor, let's not rewrite history. Ryan supported me the way a decorative vase supports a shelf. It just sits there, looking pretty, while I do all the heavy lifting." Her face twisted with irritation. "You are being cruel." "Am I?" I challenged. "Or am I just no longer playing the fool?" Eleanor took a step closer, lowering her voice, as if she thought intimidation would work on me. "Listen to me," she hissed. "I don't care about your little business or your ego. Ryan is my son, and I will not let you ruin his life." I held her gaze, calm and unshaken. "Then maybe," I said, my voice cool as steel, "you should have taught him how to survive without me." The silence between us was suffocating. For the first time, Eleanor had nothing to say. I let the weight of my words sink in before I stood, smoothing out my blazer. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I actually have a business to run." Eleanor clenched her jaw, and for a brief moment I thought she might lash out, but she didn't. Instead, she straightened her posture, lifted her chin, and walked out the door with all the grace of a woman who refused to acknowledge her own downfall. But we both knew the truth. She had already lost. The desperation begins. Eleanor might have left my office that day, but she wasn't done scheming. 2 days later, my lawyer called me. "You're not going to believe this," he said, amusement lacing his tone. "Try me," I replied, already anticipating the nonsense. "Ryan's contesting the prenup." I nearly laughed out loud. "On what grounds?" I asked, genuinely curious. "He's claiming he signed it under emotional distress, that he was pressured into it and didn't fully understand what he was agreeing to." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "Of course he is." "It won't hold up in court," my lawyer assured me. "The prenup is airtight, and he had his own legal counsel when he signed it. But it's clear what's happening. He's panicking. He's trying to buy time or force a settlement." "Let him panic," I said smoothly. "He made his bed. Now he gets to lie in it." That night, I received my first call from Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Then the second, the third. By the fourth call, I answered just to amuse myself. Only, his voice was rushed, urgent. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, mirroring Eleanor's words from our previous conversation. I don't understand why you're doing this, he said, his voice laced with desperation. I thought we could keep this civil. Oh, Ryan, I sighed. Civil would have meant respecting me before you tried to discard me like an accessory your mother no longer approved of. It wasn't like that, he argued. She was just trying to help. Help who exactly? I interrupted, because it certainly wasn't me. Silence. You don't have to do this, he said finally. I almost pitied him. Almost. No, Ryan, I said, my voice firm. You don't get to walk away with everything. You don't get to use me for years and then reap the benefits of my success. You don't get to play the victim now. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He snapped, his tone shifting to bitterness. I smiled. You know what, Ryan? I think I am. I hung up. Eleanor's final move. If Ryan's attempt to contest the prenup was desperate, Eleanor's next move was downright pathetic. She went to the press. I woke up to headlines splashed across social media, an exclusive interview where Eleanor painted herself as the heartbroken mother of a betrayed son. Olivia never truly loved him, she claimed. She used him to climb the social ladder, and when she had no more use for him, she threw him away like garbage. The irony was almost laughable. By noon, my PR team had already drafted a response, but I had a better idea. I made one phone call to an investigative journalist. I have something for you, I said smoothly. An hour later, I sent over receipts, years' worth of documents proving that I had built my business alone, that Ryan had never contributed financially, that he had been the one living off my success. The article dropped within 24 hours. The headline? Exposed. The truth behind Eleanor and Ryan's lies. It was brutal, it was factual, it was undeniable. Ryan called me 3 times that night. I didn't answer. Checkmate. 2 weeks later, my lawyer called me again. It's over, he said. Ryan's withdrawing his contest. He's agreed to the original terms. I let out a slow breath. He finally realized he lost. Oh, and Eleanor, my lawyer added. She's being dropped by several of her high-profile social circles. Seems they don't appreciate being associated with a public liar. I smirked. Poetic justice. And just like that, it was done. Ryan was left with nothing. Eleanor had lost everything she had schemed for. And me? I was free. As I sat in my new office overlooking the city skyline, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. I had survived. I had won. And now, for the first time in years, I could finally live for me. The silence following the media scandal was almost eerie. For weeks, Eleanor had been a force of chaos, grasping at every last straw to claw her way back into relevance. But now? Nothing. Not a single public statement, not a pitiful attempt at damage control. The only sound left was the echo of her downfall. I should have been relieved, but I knew better. Eleanor was the kind of woman who never truly gave up. She was a master of manipulation, and if she was quiet, it meant she was planning something. I just had to figure out what. Ryan, on the other hand, had finally broken. After the article exposing their lies went viral, he stopped calling, stopped texting. The last attempt to contest the prenup had been shut down so swiftly that even he had to realize there was no winning. His reputation was in shambles, his job prospects evaporating by the day. It was poetic, really. And yet, I knew it wasn't over. The real blow was still coming, I just didn't know when. An unexpected visitor. It arrived in the form of a knock on my office door. I looked up, expecting my assistant, but instead, there stood Ryan. He looked different, not just exhausted, but desperate. His hair was unkempt, dark circles under his eyes. The tailored suits he used to wear with pride were gone, replaced by something rumpled, as if he'd stopped caring. I should have felt pity. I didn't. We need to talk, he said. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. I'm not sure there's anything left to say. He stepped in anyway, shutting the door behind him. I'm not here to fight, he said, his voice quieter now. I just want to understand. I arched an eyebrow. Understand what, exactly? How you could do this to me? he said, his tone raw. I laughed, actually laughed. Do this to you? I repeated. Ryan, let's be clear. I didn't do anything to you. You did it to yourself. You chose to let your mother dictate our lives. You chose to betray me. You chose to assume I was disposable. He flinched. I didn't think. No, you didn't. I cut in. You never thought, Ryan. You just followed. Followed your mother's lead. Followed whatever was easiest. And now, you want me to explain why that didn't work out for you? He ran a hand down his face, looking genuinely lost. I thought you loved me. I exhaled slowly. I did. The words landed between us like a final nail in the coffin. And now? He asked, almost afraid of the answer. Now? I met his gaze. Now, I love myself more. He swallowed hard, nodding once as if he finally understood what he had lost. Goodbye, Ryan, I said. He hesitated, but in the end, he did the one thing he had never been able to do before. He walked away. Eleanor's last move. I should have felt victorious. Instead, an unease settled over me. Ryan was defeated, but Eleanor, she was too quiet. 2 days later, I found out why. I was sitting in my boutique, reviewing new designs with my team, when my assistant rushed in, looking pale. You need to see this, she said, shoving her phone in front of me. The screen was open to a social media post. One of the big accounts, the kind that thrived on high-profile gossip. And there it was. A leaked interview. With Eleanor. I clenched my jaw as I read through it. She wasn't attacking me directly this time. She had learned from her mistakes. No, now she was painting herself as the victim. I only ever wanted the best for my son, the article quoted her. But Olivia was always so ambitious. She never truly cared about Ryan, only about what she could gain. The words twisted in my gut, not because they were true, but because of the way she said them. Subtle. Manipulative, designed to plant doubt. So women just don't belong in certain circles, she continued. And when they realize that, well, they do whatever they have to in order to stay. I clenched my fist. She was trying to make it sound like I had manipulated Ryan, like I had played the long game, used him, and then discarded him when I no longer needed him. It was a blatant lie, but it was dangerous. Public perception was fickle, and Eleanor knew exactly how to play the game. I set the phone down carefully, inhaling deeply. Do you want me to call your PR team? My assistant asked, watching my reaction. I shook my head. No, I said, I'll handle this myself. Checkmate. Eleanor wanted a battle. I was going to end the war. That evening, I made my move. I sat in my home office, my laptop open, fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. If Eleanor wanted to play dirty, I would play smart. I pulled up everything I had, every email, every text, every record proving her interference in my marriage. The financial documents showing exactly how much Ryan had benefited from my wealth, the footage from our security cameras, conversations she never knew were being recorded. And then I sent it. Not to the press. Not to a gossip site. But to her. One simple email. Eleanor, I suggest you reconsider your recent statements. Attached, you'll find a collection of information that could be very damaging to your reputation should I choose to release it. Your choice. Olivia. I didn't have to wait long. Within the hour, my phone rang. You wouldn't dare, she hissed the moment I answered. I smiled. Wouldn't I? She was silent. You're running out of moves, Eleanor, I said, my voice calm. And I'm done playing. Another pause. Then, what do you want? She asked, her voice quieter now. Simple, I said. You retract your statements, publicly. You admit the truth, and then you disappear. She inhaled sharply. You expect me to? I expect you to fix what you broke, I interrupted. Or I will. Eleanor wasn't used to losing. She wasn't used to being cornered. But for the first time, she had no choice. The final fall. The next morning, Eleanor released a statement. There have been many misunderstandings regarding my previous comments. I deeply regret any harm caused and wish only the best for Olivia and Ryan as they move forward. It was the weakest, most forced apology I had ever seen, but it was enough. Her credibility? Gone. Her influence? Destroyed. And just like that, Eleanor Harper, the woman who had spent her life controlling others, was finished. I sat back, exhaling slowly. It was over. And for the first time in a long time, I was free. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video, drop a comment below, and subscribe to Betrayal in the End. Your support helps bring more gripping tales of deception, revenge, and justice served straight to you. What do you think about how everything unfolded? Did Olivia go too far, or did Eleanor and Ryan get exactly what they deserved? Let's discuss in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts on these dramatic twists and turns. And don't go anywhere. This story isn't over yet. There are still secrets left to unravel, betrayals yet to be exposed, and a final reckoning that no one will see coming. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next shocking chapter. At Betrayal and the End, we bring you the most intense stories of love, lies, and revenge, where justice always finds a way, but never how you expect it. So stay tuned, because the best part is yet to come.